Welcome back to the Feature Fanatics. I'm your host, Gall, and thank you for joining us back on season 4, where we talk all about the movies that have us obsessed, excited, and inspired. To all our loyal followers who have been listening since the last season, thank you so much. And to all of you who are new and are just here to listen to some Mel Brooks talk, we're very excited to be talking about a very special director. I'm here joined by my good friend and our new guest host, who you may be seeing a lot more of in season 4. He's the co-host of the Film Draft podcast, as well as my partner in crime in the Globo Gym trivia at the League of Cinephiles. It's Mr. Jacob Cunningham, hailing all the way from Australia.
Thanks for having me, Gal. It's great to be back. I don't think I've been on since we were talking about the Oscars last year. I'm excited for this. Mel Brooks is like one of the comedy goats, and I had a good time boning up on some of his films I hadn't seen to prep for this.
And we also have a very special guest. I've actually been on his podcast before. He's the host of the Lone Acting Nominees podcast. It's Mr. Gordon McNulty here joining us in the studio.
Hello, I'm glad to be here. We've tried to make this happen for me to be on your show a few times, and it didn't quite work out scheduling-wise. So, and I'm glad that this is the one that I'm able to be on, because I do love me some Mel Brooks, and I'm excited to be talking about him and his movies and his career and all that.
And I know that your knowledge of movies goes back decades and decades, and so I thought this would have been a really special one to have you on, and I'm really glad we got a passionate gang together about this guy. So let's start a little bit about just talking, why do we love Mel Brooks?
He's just funny, plain and simple. Just baseline, it kind of just boils down to he's just very funny as a person. And it builds from there, but if you want to just get it to its most base form, funny guy.
He's one of those sort of multi-hyphenates that you don't really get anymore. Like, he could do everything. He was a songwriter, a singer, a dancer, a comedian, actor, a director, a writer. He did everything. He dipped into so many different mediums. He's an EGOT, isn't he?
Yeah, he has an EGOT and a Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Obama.
Yeah, and that's another great thing. He used so much of his humor to make fun of hate and stuff like that, and so a lot of that comes from his Jewish background, and he's just such iconic Jewish humor, and he plays so many random historical figures just as that hey, he's so great.
Mel Brooks he was actually born Melvin Kaminsky, which is very interesting, and he's a recipient of an EGOT, of course. He's one of 18 entertainers in history to do such a thing. He has a Kennedy Center honor, a Hollywood Walk of Fame star, the AFI Lifetime Achievement Award, the British Film Institute Fellowship, a National Medal of Arts. That might be it, not the Presidential Medal of Freedom, or maybe both, I'm not sure. BAFTA Fellowship, and an honorary Oscar as well, in addition to his screenwriting Oscar for The Producers in 1968, 69. So yeah, Mel Brooks, he's just always been so special in my heart. So this episode is a really exciting one. He's a very formative director in my love of movies. He first came into my life with Spaceballs, which is a movie that I've seen countless times, and we'll talk about later. And then, and my dad was always a huge fan of him. But when I was 11 or 12, my grandma, she had this DVD set of some of the movies that we're talking about. Some of them, I still even haven't seen, but it's all these Mel Brooks movies, like Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles, even To Be or Not to Be, which he didn't direct, but I still think it's a great movie. And first with my grandma, and later with my family too, when it was COVID, we just had this whole week where we would sit down, the whole family, and each evening we would watch a different Mel Brooks movie, and some of them I had watched the first time, and some of them I hadn't watched the first time. And so there's always a great time to pop out Mel Brooks in my family, and especially my dad. He adores Mel Brooks. Just the other day I was watching Producers 1967, and my dad heard from the other room that I was watching it, and he sat down and he was laughing along with it, even though it's his millionth time watching that movie. So I hold that very dear to my heart. I hold Mel Brooks very dear to my heart, but he's just a lovely guy. He's hilarious. He makes everyone smile. He's one of the filmmakers that just everyone can unite on, and he's 97 years old and still just like a beloved public figure.
I think his, like you said, watching it with your family and stuff, I think his films are like often greatly improved by watching them with a group of people and friends and stuff. Like I was watching some of his back catalog, and you're watching line like, oh, that joke hasn't aged great. But then I threw on Blazing Saddles with my friend the other day, and we were just in fits of laughter the entire time.
Yeah,
I've already seen it. Like it's just, yeah, it brings people together, like you said.
First up, one of his formative films, it's The Producers from 1967, and it stars Zero Mostel and Gene Wilder. And in this movie, Max Bialystock is a Broadway producer who has committed fraud by scamming elderly women about the revenues and the residuals that they'll get from his plays that may or may not be produced. And his accountant Leo Bloom finds out about this, so now they have to make the show that is the biggest flop of all time in order for them to not be exposed by the IRS and go to jail. And that play is, of course, called Springtime for Hitler, which, I mean, let's talk about this movie. What is not to love about The Producers?
Not a lot. I like Springtime for Hitler is genuinely one of the funniest things I've ever seen on film. I watched that film for the first time maybe 5 years ago, and I think I liked the first half, but then everything is just eclipsed by that musical number scene. It is brilliant.
It's great. It's like, the thing with a lot of these early Mel Brooks movies especially is you're not wrong if you say it's your favorite Mel Brooks movie, just because like this is like such an important movie in his career for like establishing his voice and his like comedic chops. But then like you watch it now, like what, 50 some years later, and it's still just as funny. It's still just as sharp, and like I've heard someone describe his like his timing as like, well, here's a joke. If you don't like it, well, here's 5 more in the next like 10 seconds. And it's just so packed with jokes. Like, especially that sequence, the Springtime for Hitler sequence. It's just joke after joke after joke after joke. And if one of them doesn't land, the next one will, or the next one after that will. Because like, it is all ends of the spectrum of what comedy can be. Highbrow, lowbrow, visual gags, like dialogue jokes, like all sorts of different types of comedy packed in one after the other, and it never gets stale. It never gets repetitive. And I think The Producers right off the bat coming in with that just like mastery of humor, I think is it really sets the stage for his career to come, while also just being really good and funny on its own.
Gene Wilder yelling is about as good a comedy asset any film can have.
Yeah.
Did you guys know Gene Wilder was nominated for the Best Supporting Actor Oscar for this movie?
Hell yeah.
I didn't find that out till like yesterday. And
what other nominations? Sorry, it won screenplay. Did it get any other nominations?
Those are the only 2. So it was nominated for those. It also was placed 11th on AFI's 100 Years, 100 Laughs list. So I think it just goes to show that, in my opinion at least, also, this is one of the quintessential comedies of all time.
Is it the highest Brooks film on that list?
No, Blazing Saddles is 6. There we go. Blazing Saddles is number 6. Why is The Graduate on here? The Graduate is not a comedy.
It has funny bits. But yeah, I know I saw you noted that it beat 2001 in screenplay. How do we feel about that?
I'm for it. Like,
in terms of writing,
I'm 100% for it.
Yeah. Look, 2001 is, I think, like one of the best made movies, but I don't think it's about the script. I think it's about Kubrick and his direction. So absolutely, the producers for screenplay, I'm for that. Another thing I really want to note about this movie is Zero Mostel's performance, which until I saw it 2 days ago, he never really stood out to me.
See, I've only seen it once many years ago, and I felt the same. So I'd be curious to see how a rewatch reshapes that.
So watching it 2 days ago, he's actually the best part of the movie. I think he's just so good. And I don't think I've seen him in anything else, but he is just phenomenal. He's giving it his all. I think I always saw the 2005 one first, which we'll get into that right after. So I was afraid, like, this is terrible to say, but like, will he make it his own in my brain, even though he's the one who came first? Like, he's the one who came after in my brain, but you know what I mean.
Oh no,
So,
I get that. Yeah, there are a few films where I prefer the remake, but I'm like, maybe it's because
yeah, but Mostel is actually phenomenal, and Wilder is also like great as he's sort of like the regular guy who's like coming out of his shell, but he also has like those physical comedy moments, like when Mostel's standing over him and he's like, yeah, like, don't jump on me. One more thing I love about Springtime for Hitler is that one of the lyrics in the chorus is, we're marching at a faster pace. Here comes the master race. That makes me laugh so bad. Oh my God.
And just all the design, the little design elements in the play, like the girls in the tank outfits and everything. This just everything's draped in Nazi imagery. It's so good. It's so funny.
The overhead shot where they're doing the chorus line kicks in the swastika that like isn't for the audience because they can't see it from that angle. It's just for us. It's just for us, the movie going audience.
The play coming after the film is kind of interesting because that sort of stage aesthetic really influences the look and feel of the remake, whereas this one's much more of sort of a film.
Yeah, and I think the 2005 one, again, I always saw it first, but I do think it holds up as well as a remake. You know, I think we've gotten a lot of those. It's a really big thing now. So we just got Matilda the musical. Now we're getting Mean Girls the musical. All these like movies that were made into musicals, and then they're making them into another musical movie. But I think the producers really holds its own. The 2005 one, I think Nathan Lane, he's not trying to imitate what Zero Mostel did, and Matthew Broderick also. I think they really make it their own. They have their own dynamic. I think they also brought that from the Broadway play, and I think they really did a good job. And it also expands on it. I think the first movie is more to the point. It's paced better, and it's also a little bolder because of the era that it came out, but also. I do think it does expand on things like Leo Bloom's journey into leaving accounting, becoming a producer, or I think most of the songs are really good. Also, we're talking about how well these movies age. In the original movie, Ula is like the most prominent female character. She has 2 scenes, and she's basically treated by Max Bialystock like a puppy dog. That really didn't sit well with me. Like
she kind of is in the remake too. She just has more screen time.
She has a whole like musical number, and they get married by the end. So maybe that's why I thought in my head like, oh, she's much more of a character. But
she is more of a character, but it also just kind of Bialystock drooling over her the whole time, but like Uma Thurman makes it work. She's she's funny. Swedish accent terrible, but she's very funny in it.
When they come to the director, who's like a cross-dresser, he's very flamboyant. In the musical, he has a song. The song's literally called "Keep It Gay," and like he has a whole musical crew that come in, and I love this scene. Or you have Will Ferrell as Franz Liebkind, who delivers like a terrific performance when he's auditioning to play Hitler, and you also have a bit of a happier ending for Max and Leo. Like in the original, it just ends with them performing Prisoners of Love, and it's kind of like they said, and like, yeah, Max is a shitty person. In the original, it really leans into that, but in this one, it sort of says like, oh, they've given all these prisoners a chance to perform, so now they become successful on Broadway again. So
which
they
I guess
do change that.
And it is more in keeping with that exuberant Broadway musical sort of style. So yeah, they're different, and I think they both have ways they come. The original's definitely the best. It's like you said, it's better paced. It is more consistent. Whereas I guess the remake appeals a bit more to my sensibilities. I think in that I love camp, I love silliness, I love musicals. So I guess there were more consistent jokes that hit in that. But yeah, I think the original's still the best, and like the third act of that film is maybe the best stuff of Mel Brooks' entire career.
Even if it's not my number one favorite of Brooks's career, it's like, again, like I was saying, if you were to put this as like the best of his career, you're not wrong, because it sets the stage for so much of what's to come, while also, like, it is so singular in his career for being just like about regular people. So much of what happens after this is that it's like going into genres and going into like different time periods and like playing with the whole like specific tropes and genres and pastiches and parodies or whatever. And this is just about two guys putting on a play.
Look, I think it's Mel Brooks, so I do think people can still watch it today and understand the multiple layers of satire beneath Springtime for Hitler. But that movie would never be made today. Let's be honest. This movie...
Blazing Saddles, the one everybody says that about.
We'll get into Blazing Saddles. But first, we have one more movie to discuss. Jacob, what movie are we talking about first from that same year?
Yeah, next up, I mean, what a goddamn year for Mel Brooks. But next up, we have Young Frankenstein, another Gene Wilder joint. 1974, that and Blazing Saddles both came out that year. But yeah, that is another one that you could you could say that's your favorite Mel Brooks movie, and no one would tell you you're wrong. Maybe Gene Wilder's best performance under Mel Brooks. It's like it's a send up of the 30s monster movies, but like it's so loving in the way it does it. Like, and I've noticed that with a lot of his satires, like High Anxiety. It's making fun of Hitchcock, but it does so in such a reverent way, and genuinely like immaculate production design. Like he apes these movies and like genuinely comes up with some really great compositions and production design and everything. Yeah, no, it's a blast.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the sets that they used were some of the original sets from some of those like Universal movies from the 30s.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. And like cool. The camera and film stock that he used is the same type that was used on those movies. Like, when's the last time like a full-on studio comedy had that level of like just craft
Barbie? That's about
intrigue.
It.
Yeah, well, yeah, Barbie. Yeah, that is a little asterisk there because yes, that absolutely.
Well, I'm hoping Barbie ushers in a new era of that.
Yes, of like caring for the movie you're making. Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein were the number 2 and 3 highest box office movies of the year, only behind The Towering Inferno. Like, wow. People went out to see these movies.
No, I'm reading it now. You were right. I mean, most of the lab equipment were the props that were created by Kenneth Strickfaden, I'm sorry, for the 1931 Frankenstein. It was also nominated for 2 Oscars, Best Sound and Best Adapted Screenplay, which is awesome. And Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks wrote the movie together, which is so cool. I think looking back into his filmography to prepare for this episode, you see a really beautiful friendship and a really beautiful partnership between Gene and Mel. You think of Gene Wilder as a wide audience. Yeah. A lot of people would tell you Willy Wonka. But for me, Gene Wilder has always been the guy who is just giving it his all in the Mel Brooks movies. And one of you guys mentioned about where this ranks for Gene Wilder. This might be my favorite performance of his. And about the set design and the aesthetic, honestly, if the characters didn't open their mouths, it looks like a classic monsters movie. It looks like he genuinely, like you said, he was paying tribute to it in a loving way. Like even though like Frankenstein, he's like, he's a monster, is very much, they're showing like the empathetic side of it. We also saw him play, really collab with Cloris Leachman and Madeline Kahn, I think starting here. I don't know if they were in anything with him before.
How had we not brought up Madeline Kahn yet?
God, yes. Incredible.
Yeah. It's where we start to really kick into gear with his like regular players. And I think Madeline Kahn might be my favorite of all of them across his filmography.
Marty Feldman also is just like electric in this movie. It is one of the funniest. Like this movie has like 3 or 4 of the funniest performances ever put to film, and they're all just in the same movie talking with each other like it's no big deal. But like it's some of the funniest acting and comedy and performing of the writing, just like all of that. And it doesn't like. It's not a movie that feels like it knows how funny it is, because it is all very dry. But like
again, the best comedy is when no one's in on the joke. Like
yes,
when everyone's taking it seriously. Yeah,
and like that's maybe the best part about Wilder's performance is that he plays this character so seriously. He's
kind of like this sad guy who. Like he really like needs Frankenstein's approval, or he needs Frankenstein to need his approval.
Frankenstein.
It's
Also, there's
it's
an Igor
it's so good.
moment. There's an Igor moment that my dad always quotes, where Igor welcomes them and he's like, "Walk this way," and he walks like a hunchback. So he's like, "Walk this way." So they're walking like a hunchback. They're walking this way. It's such a basic thing, but it makes you laugh. And then there's also a scene that Jacob's referenced before in one of the trivia matches that we did actually, where they're singing "Put It on the Ritz," and Frankenstein, who's actually voiced by
Boyle is the monster.
Mel Brooks. He goes, "Put it on the Ritz," and it's like this was apparently a last minute inclusion. I saw an interview with Mel Brooks that they just like needed one more funny scene in the movie, and they were like, okay, if one person thinks this is dumb, we won't include it, and everyone liked it, so they shot it and put it in the movie, which I think speaks to just how you can see it in his process, how great of a comedy filmmaker he is.
Yeah,
and I maintain every movie is improved by a musical number. So, and he did that shit a lot.
Yeah,
and there'll be more that we will get to later on, I'm sure. And I guess
I've seen it so many times, and it's always like I don't remember which of you was saying this, but it works like even without hearing it, without like there's been times when my dad and I have gone to like bar trivia and it's been on the TV but like muted because the trivia is going on, and we'll just like get lost watching the movie and quoting it back to each other like, oh yeah, now it's this part, now it's this part. Like it's so packed full of so many all-time great comedic bits that like when you've seen it enough times, you don't even have to really watch the movie to still enjoy it, just because you're remembering how funny it is as it goes on.
So now the movie that we've been itching to talk about all episode. Jacob said that he hasn't been quite respected by the Oscars, and I tell Jacob, I beg to differ, because of Blazing Saddles. It stars Gene Wilder again as the Waco Kid, and this is about a racist town that needs protecting. Their only hope is a black sheriff. Chaos ensues from there.
Spoilers, this is my favorite Mel Brooks movie. This is the one that really ascends for me. I watched it way back when I was first getting into film, like I'm sure you did with a lot of his films, and I was genuinely blown away by how funny it was. And then I watched it again thinking, is it gonna hold up? Yes, it holds up incredibly well. You always get people saying, oh, you couldn't make Blazing Saddles again today because it's edgy and stuff. It's like, no, you couldn't make Blazing Saddles again today because like a bunch of the cast are dead and no one's putting this much effort into comedies anymore. People could and should make comedies like this in this day, because it might be like it's Mel Brooks at his most savage in terms of his social satire. Like, I know the townsfolk come around eventually, but like he portrays them as like the biggest fucking idiots on the planet the whole time, and just like just the little things, like the everyone in the town's named Johnson, like the incest jokes and stuff. Just brilliant.
Yeah, it is packed full. Like, we could just sit here. And this is a thing that happens a lot if you're like doing a podcast about comedy movies, is you could end up just sitting here and just reciting the jokes back to each other. And we could do that for probably the entire runtime of Blazing Saddles and still not get every joke, because it's just so packed with so many, again, highbrow, lowbrow. You get like some really good, like subtle sort of like sight gags and dialogue jokes, and then also you get a guy kicked in the head by a horse, or like punching a horse down, and a bunch of guys sitting around farting.
Dude, there's so many gags with like horses getting like the bit where the town blows up and the horses get launched into the air and stuff.
Yeah, it's just so packed full that, again, if there's a joke that you don't like, the next one's gonna get you. The next one after that is gonna get you. It's maybe just like his funniest movie. I feel like
only pawn in Game of Life.
Yeah, it's great. It's so fun.
There's
Cleavon
also
Little is great. Gene Wilder is great. Madeline Kahn is hilarious.
She got an Oscar nom for this, right?
She did.
Yeah, she did. That's a really interesting thing. Madeline Kahn, like, you could take out Madeline Kahn and you still have a very funny movie and you still have the same plot structure. But she comes in for this bit and she's really memorable. She owns her scenes and she gets an Oscar nomination.
Shout out Mel Brooks for consistently letting women be funny in his movies. I'm not saying that these films are like icons of feminism. You know, there's a lot of ogling, and he clearly likes big boobs. You see a lot of that in across his filmography. But also, yeah, he gave so many great roles to these great female comedians like Cloris Leachman and Madeline Kahn and stuff, where not a lot of comedy films were doing that in that time.
Yeah. Especially like male-led comedies, like to have these characters like Cloris Leachman in Young Frankenstein is again one of the funniest performances ever. And yeah, no, it's very
also shout out her in High Anxiety. She plays this like Nurse Ratched type, really unhinged,
Yeah.
and she's so it's her and also shout Harvey Korman, who's low key one of my favorite Mel Brooks regulars. Him and Leachman have this like weird lover-esque relationship in High Anxiety, but here in this as the Hedley Lamar, one of the great film villains, and everything that comes out of his mouth in this is so gay, and I love it.
There's an ongoing joke. It's literally like 16 times the same joke where people call him Hedley Lamar, and he's like, Hedley, it's Hedley. And so this just goes on, and every time it's funny. And you also have Mel Brooks as the governor, like cameoing. It's a wonderful cameo. And I love Hedley Lamar personally as the villain. I think, you know, it's a villain archetype that's been done to death today, just like the wealthy, greedy guy in Power. But I loved him here. And
also, he has maybe one of my favorite lines in the movie towards the end, where he gets like taken down outside the Chinese theater with all that meta stuff. But he like sees, I think it's Douglas Fairbanks, sees his prints on the Walk of Fame, and as he's like getting shot down, he's just like, "How can he do so many amazing stunts with such tiny feet?"
I'm laughing.
That absolutely buckled me when I rewatched.
Did you guys know who's credited in the screenplay for this movie? Richard Pryor is credited as a writer for this movie.
Yeah, because he was gonna play Bart, but then he just wasn't able. I don't remember the reason.
They also talking about this movie's legacy. They have on the DVD a pilot that they shot for a spin-off series called Black Bart, which starred Louis Gossett Jr. as Bart, who is still today a successful actor, and that never came into fruition. But there is a pilot available on the DVD bonus features, which it's not very good, but I guess it was important to launch Louis Gossett Jr.'s career or something. Yeah, another thing I love in terms of the jokes of this movie, I mean, there's a scene that you can just never stop rewatching, which is Bart's arrival, Sheriff Bart's arrival, which, you know, they're all like ready to welcome him, and there's the guy standing on the roof going, "The sheriff is a bong," and the bell keeps ringing every time he's about to say the N-word, and they go, "The sheriff is near." What is he saying? And then then he enters, and everyone goes silent. It would look so simple to today's audiences, but it's actually such a beautiful way to capture the absurdity of racism. Bart's like, "No, you guys are gonna welcome me." Like, he brings down the thing. He's like, or he goes like, "Let me whip this out," and he just like takes out a piece of paper. Yeah, exactly. Or there's like the minister or whatever, like the priest. He comes in and he's like, "You should listen to what this book says and empathize with everyone," and someone just shoots the Bible. God.
Threatens to shoot himself. Like, "Don't stop, he's crazy."
Yeah, so takes himself hostage. God, that's so good. To take it back a bit to the producers, in Brooks's Oscar speech, he has this bit, like it's a good speech. Go look it up. But there's a point where he just goes, "I'd like to thank Gene Wilder, and I'd like to thank Gene Wilder, and I'd like to thank Gene Wilder," and he just does that a few times, and it's like it's a joke, but it's very sweet. Just like, yeah, their collaborative efforts across their careers is just like, it's really heartening to see them just be such good friends, and for him to like write these great roles for his friend. That he's really well used here.
Bart and the Waco Kid have to dress up like members of the KKK, and then they like rip off their KKK hats, and he goes, "And now for my next impression, Jesse Owens," and he runs away. And me being like a 14-year-old kid, I thought that was so funny that he was just like, "Jesse Owens," and he did.
One of the best lines is when he distracts those KKK guys and just yells, "Where are the white women at?"
Yo, I was like, how did I forget to say that? Where the white women at? It's like him trying to imitate what he thinks a racist person thinks of a black guy. There's just like layers of humor there. One more thing I of course want to talk about is them not just breaking but obliterating the fourth wall at the end. I remember rewatching it and my brother was just like, what the hell? What's going on?
It's just a different movie for the last like 10 minutes.
So they have the
huge fan of that stuff too. I'm a big fan of anachronisms in comedies and everything. So yeah, that's oh my god, I'm just dying throughout that whole final 15 minutes.
So I forget what the lyrics are. It's like, da wipe your tush, or like, stick out your tush. You'll be surprised you're doing the French mistake. And Dom DeLuise, who was also a collaborator of Mel Brooks, is playing the director. And then all the cowboys run in. And then they have to like go in after they kill Hedley Lamar, the scene you were talking about, and watch the ending of the movie, where instead of riding into the sunset, he takes his limo into the sunset. Which what a perfect ending.
So
what do we think of the theme song, by the way? Does that part age well? Do you think it's still a fun theme song to listen to?
Yeah, because it was not the guy who wrote it. Who sings it? It's somebody like notable.
I'll get on that. I think it was
I don't know if he's
by
singing
Frankie
it.
Lane.
Never mind.
Yeah, Frankie Lane type singer. Oh, then Lane himself offered his services and he sings the song. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, it's a song. I don't think it like sticks out as one of the most iconic in his filmography, but it fits the movie. And I love that he does do theme songs for most of his films.
Yeah, we'll talk about other songs that I love. Here's something that Brooks said about the theme song. Frankie sang his heart out, and we didn't have to tell him it was a spoof. We didn't have the heart to tell him it was a spoof.
That's what I was thinking.
We put in the whip crack later. We got so lucky with his serious interpretation of the song. So yeah, it's not one of his best, but it's still fun. It's like the bookends of the film, so it's great.
The next one is one I think you should.
I am a big fan of it. It's called History of the World Part 1. And it's Mel Brooks' interpretation of all the crazy things that have happened or maybe haven't happened in the history of our planet.
The OG horrible histories.
Yeah, the OG drunk history, the OG SNL, I guess. I don't know. No, this was after SNL started, but whatever you want to call it. And it has all of his collaborators that we were talking about. It has Dom DeLuise as, I think he played Julius Caesar. Or no, Emperor Nero. Has Madeline Kahn, Harvey Korman, Cloris Leachman, Orson Welles as the narrator. Nigel Hofstadter.
Character calls himself a stand-up philosopher.
Barry Levins. Yeah, so basically Mel Brooks is taking today's dynamics and inserting them into history, which, in my opinion, in the 1980s it works really well. This came in my Mel Brooks marathon that I did with my family a couple years ago, and I was laughing my ass off in this movie. I love this movie. For example, he's doing the stand-up comedian in the Julius Caesar age who has to do stand-up comedy because he doesn't want to get murdered by Caesar, I think, or he just wants a gig at the palace so he can be rich. You have Moses coming, and this is one of my favorite Mel Brooks moments in the movie. Is he comes in, he's like, "I would like to present to you, the Lord has given us the 15, oh shit, the 10 commandments to obey." And this is also something that me and my dad quote all the time. Whenever like Passover comes around, we always like quote this part from, because it's Moses. So yeah,
I was watching Prince of Egypt for the first time the other day, and when it got to the commandments bit, I was just laughing about Mel Brooks. I guess on History of the World Part 1, it's not one. I'll say it's not one of my favorite Brooks movies. I like you've been saying, Gordon, like, for every joke that doesn't hit, there are some that will hit. I think the ratio is a bit closer to 50-50 for this one for me. Not everything works, but I do think the sort of sketch comedy style helps Brooks a bit, because some of his films, some of his lesser films tend to run out of gas a bit, whereas this one, you might only have to watch 10 minutes of this story and then we'll get to another one. But do we all agree on what the best segment is?
Is it the Inquisition?
It's the Inquisition.
Yeah, it's the Inquisition.
Yeah. Come on. That
is
might be one of the
something-
best things he's ever done.
Man, oh man. Of course Mel Brooks would make himself do this in the movie. He's playing Tommaso Torquemada, which, first of all, there's this guy introducing him, and he's like, Torquemada this, Torquemada, he does this. let's be honest. You can't talk him out of anything. And then you have him singing like a 50s, 60s musical style number about how he wants to convert all the Jews to Christianity or they get tortured and murdered. Which, for Mel Brooks being a Jew, I love every Jewish person is like the ultra Orthodox, like with the curly hairs, with the kippah, with like a Jewish star on it, with like the most religious-esque. Oh my god, like it does not age well, but
I think it's aged well enough because it's coming from a good place, and it's he's using that to make fun of real pain, but it takes the power away from the oppressors by doing that, making them silly.
And I also love that he gives the Jews a part in the song. He's like, I was just doing this and they started playing ping pong with my boss and some shit like that.
The bit where he's got like 3 guys tied to these wheels and he plays them like a slot machine, like absolute menace. But yeah, it's such a delightful musical number.
Like you were saying up top, Mel Brooks has been given a lot of Lifetime Achievement Awards because he's lived a long life and has been very prominent. And I think the one I was thinking of was this AFI Life Achievement Award that they like the opening to it is Martin Short doing this thing, and then he does a bunch of the different musical numbers from a lot of the different movies, and they have these like dancers that come out. There's like Hitler dancers for Springtime for Hitler, and they do Putting on the Ritz, and they have like the Madeline Kahn Bride of Frankenstein and Cloris Leachman, and they do Men in Tights, and they do The Inquisition, and they do Blazing Saddles. And I was just thinking of that while we were talking about
watch this.
And then the other one that I wanted to send, which is from his Kennedy Center one, which is a bunch of different people, like the Inquisition one in that is sung and performed by Richard Kind. You have Martin Short again doing that one, doing Blazing Saddles. Jack Black does Men in Tights. Harry Connick Jr. is here, but I can't tell which one he's doing because he's just like singing it like
he's just
into a mic.
Generic looking white guy.
Richard Kind shows up in a little cameo at the end of the Producers remake in like a courtroom hearing, and it just made me think of Beau is Afraid, Richard Kind courtroom hearing cinematic universe. But he delivers the line, "We find the client incredibly guilty."
Yeah, so he's always been a character actor who I've noticed here and there. He was Bing Bong and Inside Out. He's just great. Let's shout out Richard Kind.
Love me a Richard Kind.
Just shout out Richard Kind always.
Yeah. It's kind of a hit or miss, but like the hits hit and the misses you just sort of forget about, which
that's what I feel.
Yes. Maybe not the case for some of his later movies as far as some of the misses, but this one it's solid. It's a solid movie. And
Gal, you checked out History of the World Part 2. Any thoughts on that?
I have not.
Okay, yeah. I wanted to talk about History of the World Part 2 for a sec because I thought maybe we should watch it because it would be fun to discuss it. Like, because it's the only thing that's remotely a new release from Mel Brooks. I watched a bit of it, and it's not what I expected. I thought it would be similar to this movie where it would be like a couple major segments, but it's actually like each episode is just like a couple of like drunk history SNL length skits where like sometimes there's just one punchline and then it ends. It hits as much as it misses, but I don't know if I'll finish it.
Do they do Hitler on Ice like they hint at in the
at the end of the first episode? It's the head writers who are the people who are, instead of Mel Brooks inserting themselves into every sketch, are Nick Kroll, Ike Barinholtz, and Wanda Sykes. And they have, at the very end of episode 1, they're the commentators on Hitler on Ice, which they're using the same thing that they shot from the original. And then after, there's like a new actor playing Hitler and Eva Braun, and they're like in the backstage after they've like gotten a terrible score, so they like take out the gun and they're like, oh no, they're going to the bunker.
What about Jews in Space? That was another one of the teas.
I don't know. See, Jews in Space, that's the one thing where I don't know how well that ages today, especially because there was an American congresswoman who commented about a Jewish space laser conspiracy.
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh my God.
As a Jew, I can confirm is not real, but it's very, very star-studded. Like I said, Jack Black, Kumail Nanjiani, Danny DeVito, Johnny Knoxville as Rasputin. So you know how like Rasputin was impossible to kill? So they
Yeah.
they take Johnny Knoxville and all the actual Jackass members, and they do Jack Rasp. Where it's like, hello, I'm Rasputin, and I'm about to get stabbed and thrown into the river. So yeah, and JB
sold me on
Smoove
this, I
is
think.
in it as I think Judas, and Jay Ellis as Jesus, and Zazie Beetz as Mary Magdalene have like a whole rom-com storyline. So that's all I'll say about it.
You've kind of sold me with some of that. Next up, we're jumping forward a bit in Mel Brooks's career, because I guess as it went on, the hits got a little fewer and far between. But this is an iconic one. We're going to 1987's Spaceballs, which is, of course, like one of the most iconic Star Wars parodies ever. Before Family Guy did it, before everyone else did it. It's him riffing on Star Wars, riffing on sci-fi. I probably don't have a ton to say about it, but the thing that sticks out to me the most is definitely Rick Moranis' Dark Helmet.
It's still good. It still has some very good jokes here and there. I think Moranis is like the clear highlight, to the point that sometimes when I'm thinking back on the movie, my like perception of it is higher at first than like when I really start to think about it, just because I'm so enamored with that Moranis performance and that character. Like, a great character, okay movie, but like the shadow of Moranis sort of looms large over the entire like the memory of it, and so maybe I think I like it more than I actually do whenever I revisit it, because some of the other stuff doesn't always work, and it's kind of on the like decline. It hasn't quite gotten to like Dracula Dead and Loving It, but like there's
That's
some
harsh.
No, it hasn't gotten there. It hasn't gotten there at all. But there's every once in a while a bit that like runs a little bit too long, or like the punchline doesn't quite land, because this is a more general parody. It's not just Star Wars. You've also got an Alien riff in there, and you've got some Star Trek, and you've got just like
you got
all
John
sorts
Hurt
of sci-fi.
reprising his role.
Yeah, when it does work, it does work. It's not just Moranis. It's not that I hate all the rest of it, but you can tell you can tell this is later period Mel Brooks.
Wow, I didn't expect to bring you onto my podcast to break my heart like this.
We're not dunking
It's
on it.
good.
I still like it.
It's
But
good.
I guess it's one of the sort of hallmarks of some of his later films is, like you said, just some jokes that go on a bit too long, or films kind of based on a one joke premise that kind of burn out.
This is one of the movies that I grew up with. This is one of the movies that I've seen the most, okay? So it's a special movie for me, and I have memories laughing with my parents, my friends, my brothers. So Spaceballs is a movie I can watch time and time again and not get tired of. Y'all are talking about Rick Moranis. You know, he comes in and he's like, I can't breathe in this thing, or whatever. Or he has like Mr. for everything. So like Mr. Radar, Mr. Coffee.
I love that they call the Force the Schwartz.
Your Schwartz is as big as mine, which is perfect. But I gotta say, I give a lot of credit to Bill Pullman in this movie. I think he has really good comedic timing. Like, his name is Lone Star. He has an RV that's the stand-in for the Falcon, and the late John Candy as Barf, who is a half man, half dog. My own best friend. We quote that all the time in my house. So yeah, Candy I think is brilliant. I really love Pullman's comedic timing, and of course Bill Pullman went on to be the most successful in the cast and still an iconic actor today. Yeah, so Mel Brooks plays two characters. One of them is basically it's not really a stand-in for Palpatine. He's just like a dorky politician, President Scroob, but he wants to take all the air from planet Druida with the death vacuum. I forget what it was called. And he also plays Yogurt.
Maybe part of it is just that I didn't really grow up on Star Wars in general. I think a lot of the references. I even watched
this before I watched Star Wars.
I'm positive I did.
Yes,
I'm
like this before I saw all 6 of the original.
Yeah, but like I do think there's good stuff in it, even from a non-Star Wars fan. Like, I think Joan Rivers is really fun as the voice of Dot Matrix. I think that's a fun character. Daphne Zuniga as Princess Vespa is fun. Like, it's a character that can be kind of one note, but I think she does a good job with. I think the whole cast is good. I think
another John Hurt cameo. Apparently, I keep learning about these.
You got Dom DeLuise as Pizza the Hut.
Yeah, I was just about to bring up that one bit. It's a good bit. There's good bits here and there, but they aren't quite as seamlessly drawn together as they are in like Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles, where like the John Hurt alien thing kind of just happens in a scene, and Pizza the Hut kind of just like happens in a scene, and it doesn't have the same pace. If this probably has the same like joke per minute average of one of the earlier movies, it just feels it just feels more overstuffed.
I kind of love that like Pizza the Hut is like this looming presence over one scene, and then it's like at the end he and Bill Pullman and John Candy are flying away, and they just hear like Pizza the Hut is dead, and they're like, yes, we keep all the money. Or, like I love that it's kind of one note. Also, I want to shout out, I loved Dick Van Patten in this movie. I think he's a wonderful character actor, and him as the dad. Possibly the funniest thing in this movie is they meet Yogurt, and Yogurt is obviously the stand-in for Yoda, and he's like, here to give him some wisdom, and he's like, welcome to my lair. He's like, what is it you specialize in, Yogurt? Merchandising. And he brings up like this massive store of like Spaceballs the lunchbox, and then Spaceballs the flamethrower. Boom. Kids love this one. And that line is one of my favorite deliveries from Mel Brooks.
Spaceballs the flamethrower is a good game.
This one also has a pretty good theme song. I really like this theme song. Which is like when they have to evacuate the equivalent to the Star Destroyer or the Death Star or whatever, and there's like a Muppet, like a massive Muppet that pushes them out of the escape pod, and he's just like, bye.
I really love the bit. It's one of probably Brooks's best done bits with Dark Helmet and Colonel Sanders putting Spaceballs in the VCR and fast forwarding to right now, and like having it playing out exactly this moment. I think that's a good bit. The bit where the main characters are trying to escape and they the Empire stand-in captures their stunt doubles is a good gag. Letting them there's good gags. There's good gags. It just doesn't really come together as well.
Or there's like jam their comm system and it's actual jam.
Yeah.
Only one person would do this. Lone Star. I can't breathe in this thing. I don't know. I've always loved this movie for exactly what it is. This was my intro to Mel Brooks when I was like 7 or 8 years old. So I always thought that was like the pinnacle of comedy for a while. But I think because of my history for this movie, it'll always just be one of my favorite movies to watch with other people.
See, again, I probably watched it alone that first time, so maybe I should go to that friend's place I watched Blazing Saddles with and fire up Spaceballs to gain that new appreciation for it. Because, I'm sorry, I haven't had a lot to add.
The way you said that, fire up Spaceballs.
Fire up Spaceballs.
Sorry.
You know?
The final film that we'll be talking about is actually Robin Hood Men in Tights from 1993. What Mel Brooks is really trying to... I think his main point here was to approach the fact that the Robin Hood storyline has been done to death a million times. And you got Cary Elves as Robin Hood, which obviously I think this movie is most visually influenced by Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves with Kevin Costner, which came out only 2 years prior. So I think right as he started developing this movie probably. But I think it was also influenced a bit by The Princess Bride, which very inspired choice to get Cary Elves. And a little bit of inspiration from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Like you have the bridge scene with the giant where they're fighting, but then he joins the crew. So that's what I took a bit from it. But he really is just tossing in millions of pop culture references in Robin Hood Men in Tights. So yeah, I want to start with you guys. How do you guys feel about Men in Tights? About Robin Hood Men in Tights, not about Men in Tights.
I mean,
like, as a concept.
One of his a great title, one of his better film titles.
Like you said in your intro there, like the sort of glut of pop culture references. This tracks as like the movie in between Spaceballs and Dracula Dead and Loving It. Just like the sort of decline of just the like specificity, because we talked about it earlier with Young Frankenstein. The comedy of that is so honed, and like the pastiche and the parody is so specific of what he's like not even making fun of, but like parodying is this specific type of movie from this studio, this genre, and it feels very fine-tuned. Whereas with this, and Spaceballs, and then into Dracula Dead and Loving It, a lot of the jokes are kind of all over the place, and you get diminishing returns on the batting average of how many jokes work, and how just like it just, you know, over the course of a career is kind of destined to happen. And I don't dislike this one from my memory, but I have never really felt an urge to go back to it necessarily. There's stuff I remember being good, but I ultimately don't really remember it, and I just don't really feel like I have any reason to revisit it anytime soon.
I think on the sort of diminishing returns thing, it's almost as if once he started parodying more specific films instead of broad genres, the comedy got less focused. Gull's sitting here regretting the two guests he's brought on for this episode, but I watched this one for the first time about a year ago, and I did not really enjoy it. It has like plenty of amusing moments, like there's a Patrick Stewart cameo that's pretty fun. The villain, the Sheriff of Rottingham, was pretty fun. It's nice to see Brooks work with Dave Chappelle. But I think, again, the cast in this just doesn't hit the same way as some of the originals. Carrie Elwes is great. I love him as a comedic actor. I love The Princess Bride, but I look through that, and there's not a lot of memorable performances the way there are with his other films. So I'm sorry to ruin your parade, Gull, but this one wasn't really for me in terms of...
Listen, is anything you guys said wrong? No. But do I still enjoy this movie for what it is? Not like...
And you're absolutely not wrong for that.
Yeah. But listen, I also saw this movie before I saw Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles for the first time. So I was completely expecting a parody of Robin Hood, and I was happy to get that. And I also was more just familiar with like Spaceballs and some of the other movies that weren't some of the better ones. So although this is lower in my ranking, I still really enjoy it, and I've seen it twice. And I think it's a fun one to pop in when your family is as big on Mel Brooks as us. I think the humor is very good, and I think it's refreshing, especially compared to Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which I had seen just a bit prior to watching Men in Tights for the first time. Because Prince of Thieves, first of all, I don't love the casting of Kevin Costner. But it's not like what sinks the movie. It's just, it takes itself very seriously. It's a 2.5 hour long epic. This one is just like balls to the wall humor, where I do think it does fall short. For example, the musical number, I think pretty much kind of misses the mark here. Marion, the performance is not memorable at all. Not really interested. She's kind of just the damsel in distress who has like her funny gadgets, or she has a chastity belt that needs to be unlocked, which is, I guess, a funny sex joke. But I do like Dave Chappelle a lot. In Prince of Thieves, he's Morgan Freeman, who's playing Azim, and here he's Achu. So he's like, "What's your name?" Achu. Excuse me. You're like, of course. But I do enjoy the Sheriff of Rottingham. I do enjoy Little John, or Prince John. Oh, there's Prince John and there's Little John. So I enjoy Prince John a lot because he's just a whiny as hell prince who's like sitting in his bathtub giving orders. But I do really enjoy it. Maybe, you know, I saw it when I was 14, so I was very warm to the humor, and that's why it ages better for me.
I have comedies from my childhood that I'm afraid to rewatch because I'm worried I'll lose them.
Do you want to get into Mel Brooks's appearance in this movie? Because I absolutely love it.
I don't remember it.
Oh, okay. So I'll explain everything.
I love that he plays everything so Jewish.
So he plays Rabbi Tuchman, and why does there need to be a rabbi in a Robin Hood movie? I don't know. He doesn't even give him a moment of religion, or like he doesn't even give him a moment of encouragement. He just comes in on his horse. He's like, "I'm Rabbi Tuchman. I'm giving out circumcisions," and then one guy's like, "I want two." And it's like he just inserts himself into the movie for no reason. Yeah. And it's not like someone else is the director and is making him play a Jewish character. Like, he's the director, he's Jewish, and he's just making himself play a rabbi.
He's the friar. Is the Friar Tuck in
that's why he's Tuckman. I thought it was Tuckman because it was like butt in
I imagine that's like the joke. Yeah, but he's the Friar Tuck character. That makes okay. Yeah,
that's why he's in the movie. That makes so much sense now. But yeah, I love Rabbi Tuchman. Oh my god.
I'll take the one scene Robin Hood parody from Shrek over this whole movie. Aside
just
from
take-
it having its moments.
I'll just take Disney's Robin Hood with the fox. I grew up on
Really,
that.
I've actually
That's
enjoyed-
my Robin Hood.
I've enjoyed this one the most always, but maybe I just saw Robin Hood less when I was younger. The Russell Crowe one sucks. Let's just all agree with that. And I've never seen the Taron Egerton one. Let's just talk about the final scene for a moment, because I really love this final scene. So Patrick Stewart comes in. He's like shaming Prince John for his actions. He's like, from now on, we will call all the toilets Johns. And then he's like, it is custom for the king to kiss the bride before she is married. And then Mel Brooks does the thing that Jacob was talking about. Where he comes in, he's like, it's good to be the king. But then my favorite thing in this whole movie is Robin Hood is like, first order of business, I will appoint a new sheriff, my dear friend Achu. And he just walks up in silence, and everyone goes, a black sheriff? And then the blind guy goes, wait, he's black? And then Dave Chappelle goes, why not? It worked in Blazing Saddles. And then, and then everyone nods. Everyone's like, oh yeah, it did work in Blazing. Oh yeah, okay. And then that's how the movie ends.
Yeah. Maybe a bit, not too fourth wall-y, but like at a certain point you get to a bit of an Ouroboros of jokes just like devouring themselves. I don't know. I do like the
he's doing the fourth wall breaking meta humor, but without the like balls to the wall effort and execution that he had.
I do like the Patrick Stewart being the Sean Connery and Prince of Thieves coming in at the end bit.
Yeah. So should we get into our final Mel Brooks rankings? Do we have them ready?
I just wanted to shout out while we're setting that up, just shout out some of his other stuff that we didn't touch on.
Sure.
I tried
to be or not to
pepper in
be,
a little
which
bit, but...
yeah.
To be or not to be is fantastic.
I talked about that on my podcast not that long ago, actually, for Charles Durning. But it's just, for one, it's really fun to see Brooks and Bancroft like playing a married couple in a movie like they were in real life. Yeah, I love their opening bit where they do Sweet Georgie Brown in Polish, like the musical number. But yeah, no, that movie's great and he's very good in it.
Durning was nominated for that. That's cool.
He was, yeah. It's very cool. It's very cool. Love Charles Durning. The TV show
Jojo Rabbit. I was gonna say, if you're a fan of Jojo Rabbit or like The Great Dictator, definitely watch To Be or Not to Be. I don't know too many other people who have seen it, but it's genuinely fantastic.
I love his little bit in the Muppet movie as the like German scientist that's trying to like steal Kermit's brain in one scene for no reason.
What about robots?
Another movie I watched a bunch as a kid. Probably not that great, but yeah.
I'm sorry, say what you want about robots, but Big World is awesome.
My guy, Big World.
I wonder if that movie ages well. I'm scared to rewatch it. I used to love that movie.
Yeah, I haven't seen it since theaters, I think. So ranking, I've got 9 films here in my ranking, so I'll go from the bottom. My bottom is Dracula Dead and loving it. We didn't really talk about it much, and I think rightly so. It's not very
I haven't seen it.
There's like an inherent pleasure of seeing Leslie Nielsen as Dracula and Mel Brooks as Van Helsing, but outside of that, it's that same effect that Robin Hood had for me, just like... There's a few jokes, but there's not really anything stringing them together, and it's kind of just everyone sleepwalking through things he's done better in the past. Robin Hood would be next for me in the 8th spot. Yeah, again, just didn't get much out of that one. Then we're into the good movies. 7th for me is probably History of the World Part 1. It might be his most inconsistent movie, but it also has some really high highs, and just talking about it before made me think, oh, maybe I should put that higher, because there are some really great bits in it. But on the whole, it's not something I really see myself returning to completely. Number 6, I've got a Silent Movie, which we haven't really talked... I brought it up a little bit earlier, but this is one I watched just to prepare for this episode, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's just... Brooks, Marty Feldman, Dom DeLuise, him and his friends hanging out. He's cashing in favors from his famous Hollywood mates. You've got some really fun cameos from like Anne Bancroft, James Caan, I think. There's a great bit with James Caan where they're in his trailer and one of the wheels is broken, so they're trying to have lunch, but the whole room's wobbling and everything. You've got a Paul Newman cameo that's pretty fun, where like they're chasing him around in a wheelchair or something. Again, not everything hits in it, but it is quite enjoyable, and it is an actual silent movie, which he clearly only got away with making because he'd just made 2 of the biggest hits of 1974. My number 5 is Spaceballs. We've talked about that. Yeah, again, like it, has some great stuff, but not among my favorites. High Anxiety is fourth for me. I really, really enjoyed it, largely because of the great cast. Like, Harvey Korman is a really fun... There's a scene where he pretends to be a vampire to gaslight a guy into thinking he's still mentally ill so they can keep getting money from him to keep him in the institution. And, like, Mel Brooks is examining the guy, and Harvey Korman's behind him putting in fake vampire teeth, like... to freak the guy out. And so yeah, one of my favorite Mel Brooks casts. It's got a lot of his regulars doing great stuff. My number 3 is Young Frankenstein. What else needs to be said about that? My number 2 is The Producers. Again, it's one of his most just complete movies in terms of storytelling, and it has maybe the funniest thing not only he did but anyone ever did on film in Springtime for Hitler. And the number 1's Blazing Saddles. What more do I need to say? That film, I couldn't believe how much it held up when I rewatched it a couple weeks ago. It truly is one of the funniest films ever made.
I think I'll go next because you guys are probably going to be angry at my ranking. I also cheated. I put some stuff that he didn't direct on here, but it's like a Mel Brooks-esque ranking. Yeah. So number 10, I put The Show, History of the World Part 2. Number 9, I put High Anxiety. I saw it last night. Wasn't really crazy about it. 8, I put Robin Hood Men in Tights. 7, History of the World Part 1. 6, The Producers, 2005. From 6 onward, I think great. 5, Young Frankenstein. 4, again, he didn't direct it, but it was very prominent in my Mel Brooks memory. So To Be or Not to Be is number 4. Number 3, The Producers. 2, Blazing Saddles. And then you guys can hate me. My personal favorite is Spaceballs.
Love it.
Yeah, that's fair. I had only just prepared the 6 that we were talking about, so I'll just go with that because I'll just go with that. So my number 6, Robin Hood Men in Tights. 5, History of the World Part 1. 4, Spaceballs. 3, The Producers. 2, Blazing Saddles. And 1, Young Frankenstein, which I think is like a perfect comedy. I think that that's just a perfect movie on all levels.
Yeah, I mean, Gordon's prophecy came true. I mean, a lot of us had different movies as our favorites, completely different rankings, but still a lot of the same appreciation for most of these movies. And yeah, thank you so much for listening to our Mel Brooks Director Spotlight. Gordon, where can people find you online and social media?
You can find just my podcast is on Twitter and Letterboxd at Lone Acting Noms, and on Instagram at the Lone Acting Nominees. We talk about movies that only received 1 Oscar nomination, which is in one of the acting categories. And it's there's more of those than you would think, and there's more interesting ones than you would think. And you can find my movie Instagram, which I'm kind of on a hiatus from, kind of at a fuck it dude, let's go bowling with underscores in between each of those words. And yeah, that's where you can find my stuff.
It's been an honor to come back on. You can find me on Instagram at Jacob Watches Films. That's sort of where I'll share everything I'm doing. A couple months ago, I started a podcast of my own called The Film Draft, where basically me and a friend and some guests every week, we do like fantasy sports style drafts based around a film topic and argue over who picked the best team. Gal's been on a couple of episodes, so definitely check those ones out if you want an entry point. We did 2010 sci-fi.
You can find the link in the description, and you can check out the rest of our videos here at Feature Fanatics. I'm Gal, and thank you so much for watching.